All right, well, good evening and welcome to our Waseca Public Schools School Board work session. Today is Thursday, February 2nd, 2023. It is 5:30 p.m. and we are in the Central Building second floor conference room. So tonight we have 3 topics on the agenda, beginning with our staff spotlights, and we have a lovely full house here of people. But John and Brenda, if you guys wanted to come up to the table and join the conversation, please do. And otherwise, Eric, I'll let you kind of introduce the topic.
Yeah, so in the spirit of what we've been working on with staff spotlight is, each of our work sessions gives you the opportunity as the board to talk with a few of our staff members in our various departments and roles. It takes a lot of different jobs to make a school district work, and so as board members, it's nice for you to get a chance to meet people from lots of different positions in our district and hear about the great work they're doing to support all of our families and kids in the district. So Dr. Miller here from the high school, and I'll let him introduce his team as well and wants to share with you some of the things we've got going on at the high school.
All right, thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight, and I have Dr. McGuire with me as well, and Mr. Hanson and Mrs. Nelson from the high school, who both teach concurrent courses right now. So Eric had asked if we had any ideas of topics to bring, and I thought this is something that Brooke and I have been working a lot on this year, as well as the instructors, and a lot of learning, even for myself in the last couple years, about what concurrent enrollment means. And so just to clear it up, so if you not understand all this, I'm not trying to be patronizing, I'm just trying to kind of show you how this all sits out. So we have opportunities for students, high school students, to earn college credit, and there are 3 different avenues. One would be through AP, or advanced placement courses. That is where they take the course. Teachers have access to curriculum, and of course they're trained and everything, and at the end of the year they can take a test. Students take a test, and depending on how they score, they could earn college credit. Could being an operative word. A lot of times, and AP has kind of changed a lot of things over the years, and it's a lot more difficult. There are more colleges, especially private colleges, that aren't even accepting AP scores. They just don't even do anything with it. And some colleges, if you get a 5 is usually the highest score you can get. Okay, you can get a credit and an A. Some, okay, you got a 4, you can get a B, and so it's a lot more challenging. Then we have PSEO, post-secondary enrollment. That's where students take courses directly online. Well, sometimes it can be online, but in person at universities. First trimester, I didn't get all the data on this, but first trimester we had 43 students take at least 1 or more classes. And we have several that are full-time PSEO as well. And then we have concurrent enrollment, where teachers are qualified to teach a course that is then at the end of the course, the students earn the college credit from the university. Mr. Hanson teaches a CIS political science course with the University of Minnesota. And so at the end of this year, when students have successfully completed that, then they will earn the credit, but Mr. Hanson has been their teacher. In this state that we're in, and many other districts, especially in outstate Minnesota, with declining enrollment, one of the things that I have become very passionate about is trying to find ways for our students to stay on site as much as possible. There are some students it just works better for, and that is through concurrent enrollment. My oldest son, I've witnessed or been around with him, and he goes to MSU, so he's not a high school student, but some of the instructors that he has had, you just kind of go, what? And thinking about the instructors that we have and the quality that we have in our school to be able to teach and offer these courses to our kids is huge. Christine Meeks, one of our counselors, was talking with a student today about concurrent enrollment classes. She wanted to take an English class next year, and Mr. Angusether happened to be walking by, and next year we're going to be offering a concurrent enrollment course through MSU instead of AP English. And within 30 seconds she says, well, I'm going to stay here and do this with Mr. Angusether, because he's a known entity and there's so much more support. So I could go on and on and on and on about this, but we have a time limit. So Dr. McGuire's, I think the next slide.
Yeah, I'll do my best to explain the cost. It's pretty complex, and there's a lot of moving parts that factor into these costs. So just be aware of that, and that so this is just an example of 3 of the institutions that we work quite a bit with, and this is the cost currently as of now, but that will change annually. So when we're looking at a PSEO course, the U of M, we pay $359.13 per credit, keeping in mind that most courses would be at least about 3 credits. And then also there is some student aid factored into that cost, so it's not the cost that somebody going to the U of M outside of high school would be paying. That is an adjusted rate. You see the cost for the Riverland per credit and then MSU Mankato per credit. In comparison to the concurrent enrollment that you see at the bottom, again, each institution does it a little different, but the U of M charges $145 per registration, so that's per student per course. Riverland is $3,000 per course, and then MSU Mankato $3,300 per course. So for those last two, it's irrelevant of how many students take it. And with Riverland in particular, we can also offer multiple sections of the course, so it's just that flat rate. So it's much more cost advantageous for us to go the concurrent enrollment route as well. Not that we want to keep it just about cost, but that is one factor to take into consideration. Teachers in any school district need to meet the qualifications and are credentialed by the Higher Learning Commission. And so right now, some of the post-secondary institutions have some flexibility with that. But starting in the fall of 2025, and this is the expectation currently, that they have a master's degree, but they need a master's degree in the subject that they teach. So if they're going to offer a concurrent enrollment course in calculus, in chemistry, they would need to have their master's in that field. Or they could have that master's degree plus 18 graduate credits in that particular subject. So that's what some teachers are starting to do now in order to be qualified to teach the concurrent enrollment courses. So they are qualified to do that, and some of the flexibility that I referred to is like some of our teachers teach those AP courses, and so they acknowledge that as you've gone through that training, you're qualified because of those reasons, or some different ways that they can become qualified to teach.
There's a lot that's really crazy about this, and I promise I'll not go off on that, but an example of Joan Conway to teach calculus, the 18 credits that she would need to take in order to qualify by the standards of the Higher Learning Commission, the courses have nothing to do with anything that she teaches. So there's a lot of issues there. There's a lot of people working on that, and hopefully by 2025 we have some different ways to get teachers qualified. That makes sense. What's the next? So right now we currently have partnerships with Riverland in Austin, MSU Mankato, University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and South Central. Now something to note, the University of Minnesota, they brand their concurrent classes as CIS, College in the Schools. Not all, that's the only institution in the state that calls it CIS. So it's the same thing as concurrent, but we won't label all of our courses CIS unless they're University of Minnesota. And then here's currently what we offer and some plan to offer this next year. So college algebra, which Brenda is teaching in her advanced algebra 2 class. Calculus is new this year. We're going to add statistics as a concurrent course. We have physics through the U, accounting through Riverland, marketing, business law. New next year will be, because of how it works next year, the juniors and seniors in English will have an option. It'll be the same course because we have to kind of rotate some things to get it on track, but both juniors and seniors will be able to get Lang Lit, an English class, political science with Mr. Hansen. Exploring Careers in Education is an intro to education course that we offer. Healthcare Core Foundations and Medical Terminology and Basic Nursing is through South Central, their high step program, and students can get their CNA licensure through that as well. So so Mrs. Nelson, this is the first year that she's done this, and we won't talk about how there was a lot of logistical nightmare things.
We got there.
But she can just kind of share her experience, and then Mr. Hansen has been teaching this forever. A long time.
Nice.
A season.
I just want to, I didn't understand the numbers that you had up there.
Yeah.
So can you go back? So like Riverland was, so for my kids that are taking my class, it's a 3-credit class. So, you know, those kids are paying $700 if they go to Riverland.
Correct.
I should know the number, but I don't. But I have about 70 kids getting that class, so it's only costing us $3,000
For
versus
all of them.
them 70, all 70 of those kids going to Riverland to take it. That's huge.
Correct.
And we
I didn't know
also,
that.
didn't mention the aid that comes from the state too per student, so that per pupil funding that we
Sure.
also lose if they go the PSEO route, whereas we keep that if they go concurrent enrollment. And before the teachers share, I'll just mention the teachers do an insane amount of work, and that's part of the benefit of the concurrent enrollment too, is that they provide that support. So they're walking them through from the very beginning of explaining pros and cons with their options and what would be the best choice for them, to applying and registering, to like that whole process. They're walking them through that. So it is a lot of extra work for them.
And I promise this will be last, and you're done. Another example is the students that do PSEO don't necessarily get the support that they do at our site. We had 3 seniors last year who failed a class in the second semester, and they had 2 weeks. Like, these are kids that should not have failed a class, and they failed, and they had 2 weeks to make up the credit in order to graduate. So we had to do a bunch of, stuff to help. I mean, of course it worked and got through it, but they get more support from these people. Okay.
07 is the season that it started.
Oh.
07 is the first, and we were the first class. And John Rocky said, you might want to consider that. And so we applied. And if in fact we went forward with what the expectations and requirements are now, I would not be able to be accredited under HLA. That requirement will be one of the more odd requirements out there. I would have to have a master's degree in political science to teach seniors in high school by their requirements for concurrent enrollment. A master's degree by math teachers would be required. And I got around it because of my experience and other things, and had been teaching it for years, and basically my resume qualified me under a series of other things. But there's a lot of odd things going on with some of that, and you are aware of this if you have children of this age. There's a competitive world out there for families' dollars in the form of tuition, and they like it that PSEO kids come, and the colleges like it, and they make it as easy as possible to be a part of the PSEO world. And I get it that totally works for some families and some students, but I'm the guy who last spring, 3 kids had to be put into the middle of my last trimester course and say they can't get through their PSEO, they need to scramble to pass this class, otherwise they will not graduate. That support gap is huge. Those high quality kids also are not a part of our community very much, you know. I would love having them in my class, but I totally understand why they choose to do it. I just want them to make that choice as a family with all the information available to them, that the other options are there. Now, that being said, my cohort of the political science at the University of Minnesota has a requirement to be able to be in that class. You have to be in the top 20 to 25% of your class rank as a junior to qualify. And part of that is protecting the student from setting them up for a bad experience if they get in it and it's too much and the rigor is too hard, because it has to be college rigor. I had one of my students the other day, and I have a handful of students that spend most of their day in PSEO and come from my 7th period class. And I remember handing out an assignment, and one of my girls said to me, she said, "Boy, yours is a lot more work than my PSEO class." And I just kind of paused and thought, I'm okay with that. You know, and not, I'm held accountable. I have meetings 4 times a year at the U. They come and observe. I have to submit my syllabus. There's a lot of accountability with the University of Minnesota for what I teach and how I teach it. And I like that. I like it a lot. And it's 4 credits for me, and they pretty much are accepted virtually everywhere. And it's typically not the grade, just the credits. Unless you're already, if you go to the U, then it's a part of your U grades, and it's a part of your U GPA. But mostly it's just a part of the credits. So if they go to St. Olaf or Gustavus or somewhere, that's one less class they have to pay for and take at college. And they were a part of our school and a part of our school community. And we didn't lose their state aid because they went PSEO. And I'm not bashing on PSEO, I'm just saying I like those kids in our building. That is just nice to have them there. So that's personal opinion. Plus, my own 2 kids took CIS and AP and I felt like those were incredibly valuable experiences to help prepare them for college, those courses in our setting. So anyway.
Yes. You know, as a math teacher, we get a lot of kids who try to do the PSEO and they have no support. And math is one of those things where, you know, I have a lot of kids that are doing PSEO and they're online and they want to come in and get help and stuff. And it's difficult because I have my own group of kids that I have to take care of at the building. And so I think when we offer in the classroom concurrent enrollment for these kids, they see the support. And, you know, we're getting to the point where I have to tell kids, if you decide to do the PSEO, you have got to contact that professor and make those office hours. And I don't have time to help you with it. I have to help these other kids first. And for my kids taking the classes through Riverland, Riverland's got pretty good transfer to other schools. My kid had Riverland credits that she took to South Dakota. And I think they transfer. And for math credits, if you're not going into a math related field, for a lot of our kids, those math credits will take care of their college requirement in math. So if you're going to be what would you do other than math? I don't know. Say you want to be what do you do other than math?
Well,
you can't even think
you have
of
to
it.
settle for something.
Well, if you settle for history or something, you know, yeah, political science, that college credit would take care of their requirement. If you go into a math related field, they're probably going to make you back up a little bit and take those math credits as part of your major. But the foundation is great to have it from here, so.
Yeah, so we're just trying to figure out, offer opportunities for kids, and yeah, the kids that, I know Erica is doing PSEO, and there are kids that they just
But
thrive.
her sister
and
is doing concurrent enrollment.
There you go.
There you go.
And so, there's lots of things, but of course, we want to offer our quality teachers to our students so they have a better experience.
Kids are excited about the English next year. I know that. They're already talking about, they're very excited to be getting credit in the math class. Yours has been around forever, so they kind of assume that that's coming, but.
Yeah.
Besides your poli-sci class, do these other concurrent enrollment classes have minimum requirements, or can kids just enroll?
For the math class, they have to have, we actually went back to their 8th grade MCA scores because of the COVID no testing thing, but we look at MCA, we look at ACT, and then if those don't, we have to write a letter recommendation for them to get in. So there's some hoops you have to jump through.
Yeah, because they have to be admitted at the university.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is.
And it is mostly protection of the students.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do not know all about all the other University of Minnesota ones, but we teach University of Minnesota CIS physics.
Okay.
And stats as well, isn't it?
Right,
UIS.
Spanish.
Yeah, U of M and Spanish, right.
Well,
We're all
it's
three.
college algebra through
Mathematical
modeling for
modeling.
CIS.
Right. So each has got a unique little
Okay.
requirement. That's a great question, though. It's a big part of it.
So our teachers and counselors do a lot of input, help, pulling data.
I have one question. I was trying to think, from the standpoint of the students, or maybe from us as a district, if a student is aiming to probably go to college, is there any reason why they wouldn't want to take as many of those classes that would fit in? I suppose may increase their challenge, may increase their workload, but it seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm just trying to think of what a downside would be.
The only downside that I've heard is that, in fact, I was just in a meeting this morning where we were talking about that, as universities become more sensitive to, we want you on campus for a certain number of years, we want to make sure that what they're taking actually does transfer to something that would help their experience become more efficient at college. And so I think because many universities are now going into once you're a junior, then you're in the specialized education program, or you're in the specialized engineering program, wherever it might be. So they're still going to try to get you there for 3 or 4 years. And so I think that for a student who may not know exactly what they want to get into, just taking everything they possibly can probably isn't beneficial. But if they know really where they're heading, then we can help them with the counselors, with the teachers, craft their plan, so it does make their experience more efficient. But it doesn't necessarily help just to take everything you can, because then they may not all have the same value when you get onto the higher ed experience.
The other question I was thinking is, are any of the classes that we offer for concurrent enrollment or CIS ones that are basically required for graduation anyway, or I was going to say, are
Mine
most of
is.
them?
Yeah.
So my kids have to take my class,
Same.
but
Right.
they can take it at,
They could take
with
this.
or without credit. So like within my classrooms, I have 4 classes. Probably 2/3 of the kids in each class are taking it for college credit, and the other third is not. But it's the same work. It's the same amount of work to do. But some of those kids were advised against taking it because they're, maybe not getting a grade in there that they want to take to college with them. So, they have to be careful because, I have 9th graders who are making college decision because this goes on their transcript.
So that added a whole new, there's
Yep.
so much that we had to think through about, okay, freshmen, are you,
How do you share this information with kids? Do you have like sessions or? I know at PACO I know about it, but this one I don't know if I didn't pay attention or.
So this year, by statute, we have to have a PSEO meeting
Yeah, that's-
within registration, whatever. And this year, we kind of added another
Okay.
piece, just talking about concurrent a little bit more. And we're going to be looking at, kind of college options rather than just strictly PSEO.
Okay.
And try to, so we're thinking through all that as we kind of are moving into registration stuff now. So.
I've got 2 questions. Down the road, do you see more of a blurring between college and high school? Do you see that continuing? And second question, I know a lot of colleges, their enrollment has gone down. Do you see them going after high school students more and more and more and more to try to get that enrollment back up?
It kind of fits what I mentioned at first, Dave, was that there is a competition and there's only
Yeah.
so many dollars and so many families and so many kids that want to go to higher ed, and they're competing against each other. It used to be many years ago, because I've been around long enough, that certain college classes taken by a high school student wouldn't be accepted at a Bethel or a St. Olaf or a Gustavus or other places. They wouldn't be accepted, so there was no advantage to that. Now, those universities are almost put in a position where if we say no, we won't get that student at all. They'll go somewhere else that says yes. And I'm not saying that course that they're taking isn't of value. That's not my point. That competitiveness, I think, exists. So I think that blurring happens. I just talked to somebody the other day, and I'll make this really quick, that went to college and was almost already a college junior at whatever age that would be, 19 or whatever, and went into their education program and finished their education program in 2 years and was qualified to be a student teacher and into the education and be hired as a teacher, but only like 2.5 years older if they were teaching seniors. See what I mean? So there's a certain level that all of us go through maturity-wise that has to happen, but we're almost rushing that process quite a bit. So anyway.
When I think along those lines, obviously, we're still offering a whole breadth of just typical high school courses.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Yes.
this is great to see all these options, but kids have lots of options beyond college courses at Waseca. So,
Yeah, none of these,
Yeah.
none of what you just said has happened at the expense of
Yes.
the college ones, which is the beauty of being able to be a concurrent enrollment student. Yeah, that's a good point.
any other questions for our?
Yeah, you said, I think, you said there was 40 students last year?
First trimester this year, there were 43 students that took one or more PSEO courses.
So if you were to add the college and the school or concurrent enrollment to that, then how many probably do you think?
A few hundred. That was one thing that just did not get done today, to go through and figure that out. But it's, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see, because there are some kids that are taking PSEO courses and we don't see them ever. And then there's people that take a few. So, and that's when it comes, Brooke and I talked with Elizabeth somewhat about the financing or the cost and stuff, and it's hard to nail down how to figure that out, because we had, we paid 65% of the cost for the concurrent enrollment classes last year. So the state aid that we got, which they send to us in our, we don't see it necessarily, it's kind of weird. You see it differently, but we got 35% of that back or paid for. So it eats a good chunk of our budget. So
Most important thing, and then we can, I don't need to belabor this point, but most important thing about those 43 students is that there are probably 3 taking this class, 5 taking this class, 6 taking this class. So we're not going to be able to reduce any staff at our building because of those particular kids taking that class. So we're still staffed as if those kids were sitting in our rooms in our classrooms taking classes here in Waseca, because there's not enough of them in a particular focus area typically to be able to reduce a staff member in that area. So that's why that's kind of the numbers up there are helpful, but the long and short of it is the aid goes to the college for a PSEO class, but there's not enough of them in a particular area to be able to reduce a teacher for us, reduce a section for us. And so that's one of the biggest difference. Whereas our concurrent enrollment classes, we're teaching with our staff that are here doing great work for us all the time anyway. So might as well support us who can support them in that aspect. So good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing this. And 'cause I know that they just had the meeting about this during conferences, but it's nice to get the message out there. And thank you guys for all that you do. So.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next topic is kind of our mid-year vision card update, and this shouldn't take too long. I know we have another visitor here, so I don't want.
It's just relatively brief.
So-
So I'm going to pass this around, but as you're taking your off the pile, take 2 sheets and then continue to pass.
Okay.
They're right in order. You can just take 2 sheets and go. And so at the beginning of the school year, as you know, we looked at our strategic plan, we looked at our operational plan, and we set our goals for the school year based on what we wanted to see in our focus areas on our strategic plan. And as we develop that strategic plan goals, we're looking at what we call, and we were very familiar with this, our vision cards for the school year. And so one of the advantages of having a vision card process is that we're able to talk about it in real numbers and just really look at results and how are things going right now. So I'd like to take you through just the mid-year update of where we're seeing right now. We're seeing progress and strong results in all of our areas, but I'll just walk you through them quickly, and then at the end, if we have questions, you certainly can ask them. They're relatively straightforward, but between myself and Brooke, as needed, we can answer questions here. So increasing kindergarten readiness. We had 83% of our students who were deemed ready for kindergarten last fall, which would have been a fall of 2021. This is like graduation rates, this is a delayed year measure because it's a fall measurement. And so we had set our vision card, we want 90% or more of our kids to be coming in prepared for kindergarten based on those fall assessments. And we're seeing that that's what we achieved this fall. Was 90% of our students were able to show they were prepared for kindergarten. And Paul DeMora and his team, they purposely use that language, prepared versus ready, because ready just means you're 5 years old and ready to go and have had a screening. But prepared means you're getting ready to get into there. Then we also use our fall fast bridge, that early reading test for kindergartners. And we had 57% above the 30th percentile, and our goal was to be 65% or higher. And we were at 66 in the fall, and in the winter we're at 65%. So and that's above the 30th percentile, which is where the ranking on that, if you remember seeing the diagram or the bar graph, if not, we'll look at it again. We look at the bigger results after the DAC meeting. They run that 30 to 70%, 30 to 70%, and then 71 to 100%. That's why 30% is the magic number there on that particular assessment. So meeting that goal there. We also look at reading at grade level by 3rd grade, which we do our A reading there in the fall. We started, our baseline was a 62% above the 30th percentile, and right now, fall was 67, and then winter for 69% for our third graders. So we're seeing some significant growth there as well. MCA proficiency is listed as a measure. We obviously won't be taking that one until the spring, so we won't know that till late summer. Graduation rate is a goal. We had an 80.1% baseline, and just remember that's a 88.1% at our junior high school, and 38% at our ALC. That's how we get to that 80.1%. So it's a 80% as our, if that was our overall for our traditional high school, I'd be much more concerned, because that's a 4-year rate. And at our ALC, we have kids that need 5 and 6 years, and so that's just how that rolls. So right now, based on what we're projecting from talking with the counselors, 94% of our current senior class is on track to graduate here this spring, and we're working on those other 10 to work on those students as well. And the ALC, we have some kids who are ready to graduate here this spring as well. So 87% combined, so we're looking like some growth here in graduation rate as well. The gap, the next two measures were about gaps. And so MCA is our measurement. We're using that because that's the state measure when it comes to this type of particular work. And if you recall from last year, we talked about our black students were achieving 13.6% lower than the all student group, and Hispanic students had a 19% gap. Looking to reduce that. Reading, black students were outperforming our all student group, and Hispanic had that 18.7% gap. And so we're using our fall NWEAs as kind of a predictor to see how we're doing right now for that gap. And you can see that 61% for all students, and 60% of our black students in math, and 43% of our Hispanic students in math. So still seeing that gap with our Hispanic students, but definitely closing that gap with our black students. So we want to continue to do that good work. And 67% of all students in reading, 80% and 52% for black and Hispanic students there. So we're definitely seeing that gap close in certain areas, but we certainly have some areas we need to continue to get better at as well. And the NWEA does prove to be a strong predictor most of the time to our MCA results, so that's good. And then the next test on there would be the outperforming the state averages, and we wouldn't have any data on that yet. We do that yet. So, okay. Turning to the back page, I know I'm going fast, but you'll have a chance to take these with you and study them if you'd like. But the so breakfast participation, not surprisingly, when we wrote this goal, 377 daily breakfasts, hoping to increase somewhat. That was before we had known that what the pay process was going to be for meals, and now that students are paying for all their meals, it's probably not surprising to see somewhat of a decline in our breakfast now that they're not free for all students. But 289 daily breakfasts, based on the calculations I was able to come up with Ross Larson, our food service department, we're still holding pretty steady with kids eating breakfast here at school. And our goal was to increase students served with Fernbrook, and as of right now, 99 students have been served by Fernbrook this year, which is up from our baseline of last year, 73%. A lot. Some of that has to do with group size and families. We're having families with multiple students being served, and so they can tend to group together then because they have some of the same needs and some of the same challenges, and so they can see more kids, which is a positive thing as far as supporting kids in our schools. In the area of workforce, the Google Doc here, when I share this with you in the Google Doc, you can click into it if you'd like where it says list there. I did not print that out for you to save a tree, but we have gone from 20 partners that are defined to 31 defined partnerships as of right now. And what I mean by that is that we're very clear that this partner takes intern students, this partner takes work-based learning students, this partner does tours. Carrie Watt, and with Brooks' support, has really started defining that well for us. So, because we want it, when we go to a community partner, we want them to know what the relationship is, not just, oh, I work with the school to do what. We don't really know. So that's being defined really well. So we're meeting that goal as well. And I would say that decreasing the number of unfilled positions is also trending positive. I mean, slightly positive. It wasn't terrible in the first place. 5 to 7 unfilled positions during the year are our baseline. Currently, we have 4 as of right now, and I'm defining that as something that has gone unfilled for longer than 30 days past 30 or 60. How do we do that math, Elizabeth? Do you remember? Did we use 30 or 60?
And actually, I think when I looked at it, it was basically the posting since September. So, I mean, it's been a lengthy amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're defining 4 unfilled as positions that have remained unfilled long since the closing of the position, because we always have open positions. So we're not talking about the openings, because turnover does occur somewhat. But it's about how many of these are the ones we just are not finding somebody for that particular position, which is trending in a positive way. Paras tend to be that position in our district. It has a hard time finding those positions. As far as community engagement goes, seeing some positive trends there too. If you recall from the spring, I shared with you that all of our district leadership team developed a communication plan that was able to be collected and housed here at the district office, and they're working on it with their teams. And when I checked with them all over the last few weeks, they're following their plans with minimal adjustments. No one's had to make an overhaul. No one did I have to say, you haven't done anything. They're certainly completing those, and I think that's, I appreciate the honesty though, because probably half of, I shouldn't say half, 2 or 3 of the 12 who responded to my comments said, yeah, I don't know if that really helped me or not. It's kind of, this is what I'm just did it because you told me to. So, okay, that's great, but at least the communication's getting done, so I'm feeling good about that. Website analytics, we are seeing a little bit of an increase of site visits to our website, which is positive per month. That's just to the main general page for this particular analytic, which is a positive site. We weren't sure how that would, that was up over 11,000 during our pandemic time when there was distance learning. What was next week's health plan going to be? All that kind of stuff, so people reference it quite a bit. So I think we're baselining back to more normal here on that. When it comes to academic programs, Brooke is working with our counselors and preparing the questions here for our post-grad surveys that'll go out this spring for that piece too. And then the last page, just a quick last item here on teaching and learning. We've been implementing the 30-day feedback loop on our professional days, which has been something that, we kind of took a risk because perceived to be directly relevant to instruction is certainly a subjective measure in that regard, right? But we're learning that between the October and November feedback we've received so far, December was a work day. It was the end of the trimester work day, so we didn't have one for December. Was 74% learned something new. That was positive. 73% thought it was high quality. This is our staff's response. And 68% said it was directly relevant to instruction. So that was something that I know Brooke and I have talked about quite a bit, because I think we would probably say it's all directly relevant to instruction. And so what's the disconnect with our staff as to why they're not seeing the relevance of the particular PD that we're providing, which is the purpose of this measure.
Yep.
The purpose of this measure is not to say, look how great we are always. It is to say, where's the gap? Where's the disconnect, if there is any? And so one of the things that she and I have talked about with our principals is not necessarily, that doesn't mean the PD wasn't relevant, although it could be for some staff members, right? But what did we not communicate? What did we not connect? What did we not align well enough for staff so they could see the relevance of what we're asking them to learn? And so a really good learning for us in that regard. So when it comes to, the vision card mid-year update, I would say I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making. I would be a little bit concerned if we were on vision in every single one of these areas, because then did we set our goals high enough? So the fact that we're not quite there, we still have some room to grow in some of the areas, tells me we set our goals high enough, but we are looking like they're obtainable, which is positive too. So as far as a mid-year assessment goes, I'm feeling good about this, and I think we're making good progress. Staff, principals, students are doing an amazing job. We'll be having our spring DAC meeting here, probably in the next month to 6 weeks or so, and then we'll talk more about some of these results in some more drilled down details. Okay. Anything else, Brooke, that you wanted to add on that or that?
No.
Okay, good.
All right. Any other questions? Great. Thank you so much. All right, then our last topic tonight is ag to school information.
Yeah,
So I'll let you introduce.
Yeah, I
and-
will. And so, Vicki, if you want to come and join us, you can maybe up by Adita there. And so one of the things that, we know is that we want to give our students all kinds of different opportunities to learn about their world and learn about different career opportunities and different things that they have going on for them. And so ag in the classroom is something that is a set of resources, really, that we can utilize, our teachers can utilize to help support our students and think about what different careers they could be interested in. And there's a series of opportunities just throughout the grade levels that this could be experienced. So it's something we're exploring and looking at. And so Charlie is going to take us through a little bit of
Sure.
venture here.
A couple of weeks ago, there was an Ag Expo in Mankato, and there was a talk there, or a section on ag in the classroom. So I went there, and I ran into Vicki. She was there. She's did ag in the classroom in Waseca here pre-pandemic. And so anyhow, they started the program out by pouring a soybean seed. So I'm going to pass the soybean seed around to everybody. Now you can take and just pick it apart. I'd like to have you pick that little seed apart. There's a skin on the outside, a protective skin. Eric and Brooke have did this already. We'll let you do it again. It was so much fun the first time.
Right.
There we go. Not for everybody. You can pick it apart. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question. But I don't want you to answer it. I just want to know if you know the answer. Okay? What's that little black spot on the soybean seed called? Who knows? Does anybody know what that's called? Come on, now, you guys. What's that little black? Huh? Brooke knows.
Yeah, right.
I told her the other day. It's called the hilum. The hilum is kind of the belly button of the soybean seed. It's where it's connected to that pod. So what I want you to do, just kind of start picking it apart. Just pick that skin off. Can you get that skin off? I was thinking about bringing some knives here, but I figured that would not be real appropriate at a school board.
There might be a policy against
Good
that.
choice.
There might be a policy against that. But you see that little skin on the outside? That's kind of the skin that protects the seed. So these seeds have Vicki has put them in water, so they're starting to germinate. They're just kind of swelling up a little bit. So you get that skin off, and then you can kind of break it in two. Everybody been able to do that? So you can see there's a little root that's coming out of there. So what happens to this half of the seed? Next slide. I want you to do next slide for me. So we're talking about soybean growth stages. Go to the next slide. So, okay, see what happens? This is what's called the VE stage. This is emergence. And you see that seed comes up out of the ground, and these little seeds, these little halves become the leaves on the bottom. So you can see them popping out there, up on that upper there. That seed, that's called the radicle, goes down into the ground, and the hypocotyl, that thing there, that's the hypocotyl, and that sticks up. So that seed is coming out of the ground. So go to the next slide there. Okay, so these are some of the things that we can run into. During that germination problem, there are all kind of bugs, and these things are called slugs, and we usually don't see a lot of that in soybean fields. We see some out there, but we don't see a lot of that. It tends to be more in the garden crops and things like that. So, but that's one of the things that we can see. Next slide, please. Okay, here you can see the little plant on the left. See these cotyledons become the first leaves, and then that first set of leaves that comes out is called the unifoliate. There's only 2 leaves on that first set of leaves that come. Okay, and at that time we can scout for bean leaf beetles. If we lose both of them cotyledons, we can suffer a yield loss, because that cotyledon has turned from a yellow to green, and so it's providing chlorophyll for that plant. So let's go to the next slide and see that bean leaf beetle, see that little guy on the bottom there, you know, they can create all kinds of hassle with eating up your leaves. This happens in garden crops too. So okay. And here we can see these are the first three leaves here. You got the cotyledons out of the bottom, then you got the unifoliates, and then you got the trifoliates, and then the plant keeps growing and putting on extra leaves every day. And you're going to go through about 5 stages in the vegetative age, and then it goes into the reproductive age. But we're not going to go all that way. We're just going to stop right here. But this is just kind of a demonstration about ag in the classroom, how close we are to Mother Nature, and the things that there are out there in agriculture that for students to learn about, and how to take that student. Like I probably was that type of student, you know, it's got to be relevant. If it's not relevant to the study, why do I need to do it? You know, we have a lot of kids that way. And so this is some way we can show this is stuff that you can learn. So next slide, please. And then, of course, there we talked about that bean leaf, Mexican bean beetle. You can see he's a little different than it. He's got little tiny spots on his back, where the other one had more of a rectangular spot. So, okay, next slide. So these are all the fun facts. This is where the goal is. You see that picture on the right there, or the left there? That's the goal, to have that kind of production. But you can go down here. We can talk about foliar feeding. We can talk about glyphosate, which is Roundup resistance. We can talk about iron chlorosis, soybean aphids, soybean cyst, rust, spider bites, and the list goes on. So there's lots of stuff that can go on here in that soybean plant. Next slide, please. And these are all the ag job opportunities. We look on the left, or we can go teachers, agronomists, entomologists down the list. These are all the kind of the. In the middle there, I put all the salespeople. There's a lot of sales need to be done in ag. You know, there's a room for that. And of course, you got on the right side, we got equipment technicians. John Deere's got a really good program, which I pretty much almost pay for somebody who wants to be a technician in a machine. Or the IT people, robotics, GPS, farm manager, drivers with CDLs, truckers. There's all kinds. And of course, down at the bottom, we still have the farmers and the landowners that support it. So these are just some of the opportunities in there. And I'm going to let Vicki talk about her experience with ag in the classroom pre-pandemic. Okay?
Okay. Well, my name is Vicki Singlestead, and my husband Scott and I, we farm just north and west of Waseca. We raise corn and soybeans, have 800 acres that we farm, and about 40 years ago, we had a farrow to finish hog operation, and we wanted to, so we have, I should also say we have 3 grown children now that went through the Waseca public school system. And when our daughter, Michelle, who is going to be 40 on March 3rd, when she was in 3rd grade, she had Judy Leet, Mrs. Leet, as a teacher, and Mrs. Leet's husband worked with farmers through the FSA office, and we asked Mrs. Leet one day if we could bring in our baby pigs to show the kids in the classroom and tell them about our farm, how we raise pigs and the pork production. And so she said, sure. And so we brought in the baby pigs. We talked about how we raise our animals. I told the kids that we have a farrow to finish hog operation. And does anybody know what the word farrow means? And this little boy raises his hand, and I go, yes, an ancient Egyptian ruler. I thought, yes, you are right. But in our situation, farrow means where the sow gives birth to baby pigs. And so we just tried to connect then with how our pigs go to market, and they're made into the pork chops you might eat, or the bacon, ham. And then we would bring in boxes of cereal, Rice Krispies, Corn Flakes, pop that has the corn syrup in it, and say, you know, what we grow on the farm, what is in these products here that you can buy at the store. So we tried to connect the kids with agriculture, and Mrs. Lead said, I think you should do more of this with the other third graders here. And so I expanded it, and we brought in a dairy producer. They brought in their calves and told about their dairy farm, and sheep producer, and we also had a lady that spun wool, and then also a corn and soybean producer. So I did this Ag in the Classroom when we were third graders till right before the pandemic, so almost 30 years. And we just, at first when we did it, we would ask the kids, well, how many of you grow up on a farm or live on a farm? You'd have 2 or 3 raise their hands back 30 years ago. And in the past years, you would ask how many of you are raised on a farm or live on a farm, and nobody. So we saw the disconnect. And Waseca is an agriculture community. We have rich black soil that the farmers can grow great crops in. We have ConAgra that is here now. That's awesome to see. And we have the experiment station here, AURI. We have Guardian Energy, where we take our corn to be processed into ethanol. We take our soybeans to CHS in Mankato to be crushed into soybean meal and soybean oil, Western oil. If you buy that, if you read the label, it says soybean oil. So we see the agriculture here in the community, and those of you that were here when the budget cuts were going on at the school, they listed a bunch of things that they wanted to cut from the budget, and FFA, ag teacher, was one of them on the list. And the farmers in the area got together and said, we can't lose the ag program. Once that's cut from the schools, we'll never get it back. So farmers pooled their money and said, we want at least a half-time ag teacher here yet. So agriculture is important to all of us because we all eat. And like Charlie said, there's many job opportunities. And how do we get the kids to think about agriculture? Do you have the Ag in the Classroom website, or can you get that Minnesota Ag in the Classroom?
Just go Ag in the Classroom Minnesota.
But the Minnesota Department of Agriculture has a great resource out there called Minnesota Ag in the Classroom. And they have resources available for all grade levels. Teachers that are in kindergarten, right, yes, that's it, thank you. Teachers that are in kindergarten today, kindergarten through 6th grade, can order the Ag Mag, which was up there, I think if you slide down or something, but the Ag Mag is free to any teachers in K through 6th grade, and it comes out in the fall and the spring, and it's updated to talk about today's agriculture. Also, I think if you go under Educators Center, curriculum matrix, yes. So there's different, go to the curriculum matrix, but there's different programs they have on here, lesson plans already. If you slide down a little bit, it shows lesson plans. Does it go any further? Nope, okay. Well, anyway, it shows lesson plans. Maybe it's on a different spot, but I'll have you go back again. And it, school year focus areas. Also, yeah, go down, food for thought, yeah. So it has different lesson plans that teachers can go to this website. It also has lesson plans for teachers in all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade.
So Eric, maybe you want to expand on it a little bit,
I will.
like you did the other day for us. Okay?
Yeah, so really why this is a conversation for us right now is we're thinking about, number one, how do we expand our students' opportunities to learn about the standards that we teach anyway in different ways? And so, so much of what we just talked about the last few minutes have been, they're part of our science standards in different parts of our work. They're part of our reading standards. Why don't you, if you're going to do a reading comprehension activity, you could use a book about agriculture or something like that to be able to cross-curricularly tie things together. What we don't want to have happen, because it doesn't support all of our kids, is to have a particular teacher or a particular group of kids have access to something, but not all of our third graders, that sort of thing. And so why this conversation has got to where it is now is because this resource, along with some of the other ideas, we're really working with Brooke from a K-12 curricular perspective to say where might some of this stuff fit? Because we're not going to just, we don't have enough time in the day to just insert a fun activity somewhere just because it's fun too often. We do that sometimes, but not too often. And so we have lots of places in our standards where some of these activities can fit and overlay with what we're doing. So these activities that Vicki and Charlie and the website sharing us, Brooke is working now to see where would that overlay. And then it also fits into our career pathway process, because we know that by the time kids are 11th and 12th graders, some of them already decided what they want to do with their life. Some are not, some don't know. But we need to have exposure with students in lots of different careers earlier, even in their school experience. So some of those jobs, like you mentioned, they may not even know they exist. People think that, I deal with this all the time, where people think that everybody's a teacher or a principal who works in a school. Well, between technology, finance, all the different things we have to do, clerical, custodial, maintenance, a lot of different positions, right? And so exposing kids to this early is really important. But it just fits. It's not anything particularly, I shouldn't say, it doesn't feel to me like a new add-on. It feels like, let's use this additional resource to enhance what we're already doing and see where we can fit some of these things in. One of the beauties about the way Minnesota standards are set up in multiple subject areas is that we have to teach a standard or a skill, but we don't have to teach a particular book. And so if there's something we feel passionate or we enjoy doing locally, I can still teach reading comprehension, but do it with a book on ag, right, or a book on that. So that's where it's overlapping that way. So it was a great opportunity to connect at the expo the other day, and then to get some new resources in front of Brooke, in front of our team. I'm going to reach out and utilize resources to get into our classrooms. But I just don't, with anything we do, we don't want it to be a random hit or miss thing for some kids get it and some kids don't. But third grade is going to get it, or they're not, right? Fifth grade, or they're not. Not going to be, hey, half the classes happen to know that teacher. That's not how we want to operate for something this important. So, yeah. Just wanted to share that with you all.
I've got a question for Charlie and for Vicki too, and I've asked this question of Charlie before and he's answered it, but I just kind of want to know what both of you have to say tonight. Talking about soybeans. Roundup ready beans. We go to the store, we buy Roundup. It kills everything that's green, but you can put it on a soybean field and it'll kill everything that's green but the soybeans. How does that work?
Science.
It was Monsanto came up with Roundup here many years ago. Roundup's been around for many years. They didn't know what to do with it because it killed everything. And there was a researcher that worked for Monsanto, and he noticed that there were some bacteria or in their wash pool. There were bacteria living in these wash pools. So he figured they were resistant to Roundup. So he was able to take a gene from that bacteria and insert it into the plant. And so it was kind of a shotgun. And actually, the early things, they actually used a shotgun shell, and they would just blast that thing. And then, of course, they were able to grow the cell. Once you got the cell going, they were able to grow the cell and beyond, and they can make a plant. Well, then you planted all these seeds, and then you went and sprayed them with Roundup, and anything that lived was tolerant to Roundup. It was tolerant to Roundup, and so once you had a plant that was tolerant to Roundup, then it was pretty easy. So then you just start backcrossing it you would backcross it into that line, and you'd spray the seeds, and those that carried the Roundup gene kept on. And that's as simple as what I can go. But that was kind of how that all happened. You know, it was pretty much a random deal, because, like I said, when Monsanto came up with the product, it's a really safe product. You know, the LD50 on it is quite high, but anyhow, that's where it came from, and then they've continued to do that. So now we have soybeans that are tolerant to dicamba. That one's kind of fallen to the side, and we have soybeans that are tolerant to 2,4-D. So, you know, they're genetically modified, but they're making farmers more efficient is what they're doing. You know.
So there's a lot of science to agriculture.
A lot of science. Yeah, there's just a ton of science out here in agriculture. I mean, if you got a kid that's interested in science at all, the opportunities are unlimited, really. So, yeah. And of course, we didn't even talk about the animal side of agriculture. I mean, that's a huge. Everybody likes their meat products and all that stuff, and and all that. So there's lots of opportunities, in agriculture for that specific need, So yeah, so. It's been a good run. That's all I know. I've been a farmer. I've known I wanted to be a farmer when I was 5 years old. So I was fortunate. I was fortunate that way. So I was able to. But it also, when I go back and look at my high school ag teacher, Mr. Broker. I mean, he was influential in my life. Mr. Westland was my math teacher. So there were a couple of things that where I go back, and I still have my elementary teacher for 6 years. She's still living. She's in her 90s, but she's still living. So so I've had some good bringing up. So, and I've had a supportive parents too. That's been huge. So, but anyhow, this is about soybeans. So tonight, so it's soybeans it's ag in the classroom, but it's the science of agriculture. So.
Well, and I think what Vicki had said earlier about whether or not we, as teachers, as students, whether or not we live on a farm, we live in an agricultural community. So I think bringing more of this into our everyday school life benefits everyone. So
for sure,
yeah.
I mean, like Vicki said, how many hands did you used to see, and how many do you now? I used to get involved. My cousin, he'd have the kindergartners out for the dairy on the farm, and I'd visit with that, and you could see the hands. Not as many. I mean, the family's like my family is 6 kids, and my parents had a dairy farm before I came around, and now I have 3 kids. The families just aren't as big and involved in the farming anymore. Yeah. So it's good to put it on the table for them.
Yep. So thank you for bringing this to the board. I think that was a great topic to introduce, to expand on, and to see how we can add it into more of our curriculum. So awesome. Any other things we want to add tonight?
Next meeting, you're going to talk about corn.
I would just mention to the facilities committee, I hope to have a proposed schedule tomorrow by the end of the day for next Thursday's visits, and hopefully it still works for part or some of the day for everybody. But just that's the update. We heard from Wold today. They're putting together some ideas, and then we'll hopefully by the end of the week which is tomorrow, we'll have some ideas for you.
Awesome. Cool. And otherwise, our next regular meeting is February 16th at 5:30, right here in the conference room. So, okay. All right. That concludes our meeting. So, thank you.